Amara Bennett knew how to command a room. She had spent years climbing through a corporate world that wasn't built for her, and every step forward had been won with persistence, strategy, and grace under fire. As the CEO of a groundbreaking tech company valued in the billions, she wasn't just successful. She was a living example of resilience. Yet, on that evening, as her car pulled up to the Hargrove estate, she reminded herself to stay composed. She was here to finalize a $500 million partnership with one of the oldest and wealthiest families in the country. The Hargroves represented old money, legacy, and prestige. Securing their support meant influence that could open countless doors. The Hargrove mansion was as ostentatious as the family's reputation suggested. Glittering chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light, and a crowd of investors, lawyers, and family members mingled over champagne. Amara entered in a perfectly tailored navy suit, her posture radiating confidence. For a moment, conversations hushed, and all eyes turned toward her. She was used to the whispers, the double takes, the curious stares that came whenever she walked into a space where people like her were not expected. But she hadn't expected what came next. Charles Hargrove Jr., the heir apparent, raised his glass high, his smirk widening as his voice cut through the murmurs. "Well, look at this. Did someone let the help in early?" Laughter rippled uncomfortably through the room, thin and brittle, but no one stopped him. His father, Charles Sr., remained silent, his face a mask of indifference. A woman in pearls whispered something to her neighbor, glancing openly at Amara with disdain. The sting of the insult hit Amara like a slap. Years of discipline kept her expression calm, her smile steady, but inside, she burned. She had endured slights and microaggressions throughout her career, but never had she been so publicly disrespected in a room full of so-called leaders. She scanned the faces around her, waiting for someone, anyone, to speak up, but silence hung over the room, heavy and complicit. Amara's instinct told her she had two options: lash out or leave with dignity. She chose the latter. She set her champagne glass down quietly, offered a polite nod, and excused herself. "Thank you for your hospitality," she said evenly, her voice calm but edged with steel. Without another word, she turned and walked out before dessert was served. Behind her, whispers filled the space she left. Some dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Others pretended not to notice at all. But Amara knew better. This was no mistake, it was arrogance, the kind that came from people who believed their power excused their cruelty. As her car pulled away from the Hargrove estate, Amara stared out the window, her mind racing. To them, it was a careless joke, a moment they assumed she would tolerate for the sake of business. But to her, it was something else entirely. A reminder that dignity was worth more than any contract, no matter how large. The ride back from the Hargrove estate was quiet, but Amara's mind was anything but. Her assistant, seated beside her, broke the silence timidly. "Ma'am, are we still moving forward with the deal?" Amara didn't answer right away. She simply looked out at the city lights flashing past the tinted window, each one reflecting the weight of her thoughts. $500 million. That was the number attached to the Hargrove partnership. For any CEO, it was the kind of deal that cemented legacies, expanded empires, and silenced critics. But Amara had learned long ago that money without respect was poison. To accept their terms now would mean excusing humiliation, signaling to every person watching that she was willing to swallow degradation for profit. That wasn't leadership, that was surrender. By the time the car pulled up to her penthouse, her mind was made up. She gathered her senior executives the next morning in the sleek glass conference room of her headquarters. The mood was tense. They all knew what was at stake. "We've built this company on innovation, resilience, and respect," Amara said, her voice firm and unwavering. "The Hargrove family made it clear last night that they don't respect us or me, and I will not align our name with people who think arrogance and bigotry are business strategies." Her CFO shifted uneasily. "Amara, walking away from this could cost us hundreds of millions in expansion opportunities." "The board might not. The board will understand," she cut in, her gaze unflinching. We've thrived without the Harovs, and we will continue to thrive. This company isn't desperate. We don't beg for seats at tables where we're not welcome. We build our own. The words settled heavily in the room. Some executives looked nervous, others inspired. But none could deny the conviction in her tone. For Amara, the decision wasn't just financial, it was moral. News of her withdrawal spread like wildfire. Business outlets scrambled for the story. Bennett Tech cancels $500 million deal with Harrove conglomerate. Some commentators called it reckless, accusing her of letting pride outweigh profit. Others hailed her as bold, applauding her refusal to compromise dignity for dollars. Behind closed doors, the Harrove family seethed. Charles Sr. was furious at the embarrassment, and Charles Jr. dismissed the matter publicly with a sneer. "She'll regret it," he told a reporter. "No one says no to us." But beneath the bravado, cracks began to show. Investors started asking why a promising CEO would reject such a lucrative offer. Rumors of the dinner incident surfaced, whispered by those who had been present that night. Soon, the Harovs weren't just seen as wealthy, they were seen as toxic. Meanwhile, Amara stood tall amid the storm. Every headline, every debate only reinforced her choice. She had not been humiliated. She had transformed humiliation into a declaration. Respect was not negotiable, and she had just proven that even the most powerful family in the country couldn't buy it from her. The cancellation of the Harrove deal didn't just echo in boardrooms. It sent shockwaves across the entire corporate world. Amara Bennett had done what few dared. She had walked away from one of the most powerful families in America, not because the numbers didn't add up, but because her dignity wasn't for sale. That decision quickly became bigger than her company. It became a story of principle in an era where profit usually won. Media outlets dissected every angle. Business analysts debated whether she had jeopardized her company's growth or safeguarded its soul. Social commentators applauded her stance, calling it a watershed moment for women and minorities in leadership. Headlines across the globe carried her name alongside words like integrity, courage, and uncompromising. But perhaps the most profound impact was less visible at first. Employees at Bennett Tech felt a surge of pride, walking into the office with their heads held higher. For them, Amara's choice wasn't just about corporate ethics. It was personal. Many had faced subtle forms of prejudice in their own careers, the kind that forces you to laugh off insults or swallow indignities to keep your job. To see their CEO refuse to bow to such treatment validated their own struggles. She didn't just defend herself, one engineer told a journalist. She defended all of us. Her story inspired others outside her company too. Within weeks, smaller firms began rethinking the partnerships they pursued, weighing values as heavily as profit margins. At conferences and industry panels, Amara's name became shorthand for integrity. Are we making the Harrove mistake? Or are we following the Bennett example? Meanwhile, whispers around the Harrove family grew louder. Investors who once flocked to their ventures grew wary, concerned that public perception would tarnish their returns. Some quietly withdrew their capital, others pressed for answers. If a CEO like Bennett won't work with them, one investor remarked, maybe they're not the partners we thought. The humiliation Amara endured had been meant to diminish her, but instead, it boomeranged back onto the Harroves, chipping away at their untouchable image. Amara, however, refused to be distracted by their downfall. She focused on building new alliances, with partners who respected her, with communities that believed in her vision. Her company launched a scholarship fund for underrepresented students in tech, naming it the Dignity Initiative. It wasn't charity. It was an investment in the future she believed in. The ripple effect reached even further when young entrepreneurs, particularly women of color, began citing Amara as their role model. She became a sought-after speaker, not just for her business acumen, but for her story of standing firm when it mattered most. In every interview, she emphasized the same message: success without respect is failure dressed in gold. What had begun as an insult at a dinner table had transformed into a movement. And though Amara never sought to be a symbol, she embraced the role with grace, knowing that her strength could light the path for countless others. Months passed, But the Harrove family never recovered from the fallout. What they had dismissed as a trivial dinner misunderstanding turned into a scandal that refused to fade. Investors pulled back, media scrutiny intensified, and whispers of past indiscretions resurfaced. The family's name, once synonymous with untouchable prestige, now carried a shadow of arrogance and decline. For the first time in generations, the Harroves looked vulnerable. Meanwhile, Amara's star only rose higher. She didn't gloat, didn't indulge in petty triumphs. Instead, she doubled down on her work. Bennett Tech expanded into new markets, secured international partnerships, and launched a series of products that pushed the boundaries of innovation. Where the Harroves floundered under public suspicion, Amara flourished with public trust. The turning point came nearly a year after the infamous dinner. A prestigious global summit on technology and ethics announced its keynote speakers. On opening night, the massive screen behind the stage lit up with a familiar name: Amara Bennett, CEO of Bennett Tech. The applause that greeted her was thunderous. Attendees weren't just there to hear about her company's innovations. They wanted to hear from the woman who had stared down power and walked away with her integrity intact. Amara took the stage in a simple black dress. No flashy jewelry, no theatrics. She didn't need them. Her voice alone commanded the room. Business, she told the audience, is not just about numbers. It's about people. It's about respect. Too often, we're told to leave our dignity at the door if the paycheck is large enough. I'm here to tell you, dignity is the deal. Without it, every dollar is hollow. Her words reverberated far beyond the walls of the summit. They were quoted in newspapers, shared on social media, and replayed in boardrooms worldwide. The moment marked a shift in how leaders thought about accountability. As for the Harroves, the contrast couldn't have been starker. Charles Jr., once brimming with entitlement, now faced lawsuits tied to discriminatory practices in his other ventures. Charles Sr.'s empire shrank under the weight of reputational damage. They had mocked Amara, assuming her silence would preserve their dominance. Instead, her refusal to bow had exposed their rot to the world. Back in her office overlooking the city skyline, Amara reflected quietly. She hadn't planned any of this. She hadn't set out to make a statement, only to protect her own dignity. Yet in doing so, she had changed more than her own trajectory. She had challenged the very culture of business. Her assistant walked in with a stack of new partnership proposals. Each bore the names of companies eager to work with her, not just because of her brilliance in business, but because of the values she represented. Amara smiled faintly. This was the real victory. Not that she had rejected the Harroves, but that she had proven to herself and to the world that true power lies in the courage to walk away. And in that quiet moment, one truth stood clear. Respect wasn't just priceless. It was power.